Everything Piano Craft, and we do it all week long. All week long we do this. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, we do live classes like this where we talk about the essentials of piano craft, which is piano tuning is a big one. It's a very big one. And so what I have noticed is that I think people overcomplicate things. And so what I like to do and what we like to hear at Artisan Mentoring and with Artisan Piano Services, which is our company, is when we get technicians, when we bring them in, a lot of times what we're doing is simplifying, we're subtracting. And so I think that that's a big deal, is this concept of subtracting, taking away friction. And so I want to maybe little story time and then kind of show you some of the stuff that I do in my kind of daily rhythm with tuning upright pianos, and then kind of suggest a couple things. And then we'll do open Q&A, which is great. But the reality is when most technicians come to us, they're at 2.5 to 3 hours for a tuning. And they come to us and they're like, yes, it used to take me all day for a tuning, so I'm half that and I'm doing great. And we're like, yes, you are doing great. Show us your routine. And a lot of times the routine is full of tons of different mutes, a lot of temperament strips, maybe tuning devices that aren't as user-friendly as others, as well as tuning technique and posture that really, at best, slows you down, at worst, can be actually detrimental to their health. And so when we see a lot of technicians, when they come to us, a lot of times on their upright pianos, they're kind of going like this. They're kind of at this angle doing it. And so they're putting a lot of weird pressure and strain on their back. And so right away, the big one we want to focus on with them is posture. Lean into the piano, kind of get your shoulder up. And we've talked about this before. But getting into the piano, again, with my legs, I'm really kind of butt up against this keyboard and I'm leaning into it, not bending my back. I'm actually spreading my legs to lower myself. And that really helps me keep great posture. The next thing that we talk about is the actual movement of the pen. When we usually see technicians come in, they're doing this kind of thing. And we say, hey, time out. Let's redo that and use more of a popping technique. And so that looks, instead of this, it looks more like this. And so that kind of slow, actually it's not very slow, it's minute changes to the pen, but it's slow popping techniques, sharp, and then easing it down flat. So those are two big ones. The next thing that we like to do for our technicians as they come in to Artisan is this. You get to have bass, you get 5 to 10 minutes. So in this particular piano, there's 3 sections to it. There's a bass, a mid, and a treble. So you get 5 to 10 minutes to tune the bass. You get, 20 to 30 minutes to tune the mid. And you get treble, you get about 20 to 25 minutes. And so those are the benchmarks. And so we're working on setting benchmarks and expectations. And a lot of times when we do this, people that are coming in are curious about that, but they're pretty overwhelmed with the idea of tuning a piano this quickly. And so, again, what we're trying to do is establish some benchmarks. So I highly recommend doing this one as well for you folks. Is just 5 to 10 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes. Those 3 sections, and kind of think of it in those 1, 2, 3. And that's a really great practicing technique to get your time down, because a lot of times that's really the barrier for a lot of technicians, is the fact that I know it's taking me way too long to tune a piano. I can't go into a customer's house. These are the techniques and tips that we at Artisan use to help elevate not only our technicians' skill, but also really cut down on their time. Questions about the 3 things I've touched on so far?
Everyone's really quiet. Maybe
like awkward. So can they hear me?
I'm eating dinner.
David, do you build time in there to go back to check unisons?
No. Right here, we're just strictly get to the point where you can tune this in 5 to 10 minutes. And we'll start with this section. We're going to start with our technician saying, hey, you have 5 to 10 minutes to tune this piano. Get to the point where you can do that. We're not looking for perfection right now. They've spent usually a year or two trying to do that themselves and have made it so that they're not able to get under a 3-hour tuning. So we're trying to like shock the system, you know, like when you're weight training and you have to like break apart the fibers so that they can grow. That's what this does. And so, no, we're saying you don't get any more time. You have to plow through this. And they're like, well, it's going to sound horrible and I don't know what to do. I'm like, it's okay. That's okay. That's okay. So sure enough, they'll get to the point where our technicians, apprentices will come in and like, okay, I tuned this in 10 minutes and it sounds pretty bad, but I tuned it in 10 minutes. How awesome is that? And we're like, yes, that's exactly it. And then the next day they'll come and they'll tune it in 10 minutes and it sounds a little bit better. By the way we do this, because you're probably like, geez, do you guys detune this piano every other day for the technicians or the students or the apprentices? No, we simply do this. We have them tune it to A440, then the next day A442. Then we bring it down to A439, then we bring it to A441. And we're constantly having them going back and forth that way using their ETD. We are big fans of the Rayburn Cyber Tuner, which I'm going to show you in just a bit. Does that kind of make sense, Robert? We're not going for perfection. We're going for a shock to the system and get through and going for speed.
Yes, it does, especially if they're using an ETD.
Yeah.
Helpful.
And
is time to cry built into that time or not?
there's time to do a couple big heavy sighs.
Okay.
No crying.
I got a question, David.
Yeah, go for it.
So is this something that you recommend that, like, if you're learning to tune the piano, like starting off doing right off the bat, and focusing more on the speed and just kind of getting better with the ear, like as you go? Or do you want to learn like really good tuning and then start doing this to like basically just go back and get better at speed? Does that make sense what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And no, when we are training technique, a lot of times we'll get, maybe we have technicians coming to us from two camps. One is they're not technicians, they're people that work at UPS and they want to become technicians. And then there's people that have been doing it for a couple of years and want to come in and do that. So usually the people that have been doing it for a couple of years have that baseline and we're throwing them out this right away. Granted, what we're typically doing with the person that worked at UPS and now wants to be a piano tuner is we're simply having them spend time on unisons. So I'm going ahead and saying, hey, this week, Sean, you're going to go ahead and just take the unisons, and that is 2 of the 3 strings or 3 of the, excuse me. Let's back up because I don't want to go too fast here. In the piano, you have single notes, bichords, and trichords. And so what I'm usually just telling them is going ahead and breaking the unison, basically detuning one of the strings, and get used to that motion. Get used to hearing that and to making that feel right, sound right. Somebody said this, it was a great illustration. It's kind of like when you see a picture that's out of focus and then it gets into focus. So we're wanting them to start to understand this concept, and we're usually doing that for a couple weeks. But after that, Stephanie, I think it was Stephanie that asked the question. After that, we are throwing them onto something like this. Once we know that they're starting to feel it, they're starting to understand it, and they're starting to get that pin movement, and we know they're not going to break a bunch of strings, we'll throw them onto this. Because it's a really good next step, because guess what? You're going to spend this week trying to get done with the bass section in 5 to 10 minutes. That's not too bad, because they see, half of this or a third of this is single notes. So they're just moving those and getting to that point, and then they gradually get to the next section and the next section. Again, down here in the high treble, that is the most difficult section because very little movement creates a lot of sound difference. But that's kind of how we do it, is we step them into it. But this is a protocol that we do kind of right away, just so, because we don't want people to chase perfection too soon. Because the reality is they're not going to achieve it. You're not going to achieve it yet, because you even if you get it, your tuning stability is probably not there to be, is not there yet. This helps with that. And getting into that rhythm and one last thing is it makes it so that you feel like you got to win. If you can tune a piano all of a sudden in an hour, that's a huge, granted, it may not sound perfect, but boy, when you're able to make that mark, it's huge. And it's such a boost of confidence. Energy level goes up. You're like, I can do this. I remember when it took me a day or 2 days to tune a piano, and it was insanely defeating. It was super disheartening, and I didn't want to do it. But when we can get people to this point relatively quickly, then it's honing it in and refining. That's the way to go. That was a great question, Stephanie. Sorry for the long answer.
There was a question in the chat. Is there a reason after restringing to tune sharp by 5 cents?
We would actually tune sharp by 10 or 15 cents. And so I got a new pair of pants. And it's kind of like stretching in the new pair of pants. It's going to stretch for a little while, and then you get to that breaking point where it's like, okay, it's kind of broken in. Same with guitar strings. I'm a guitar player. When I get new strings, I'm cranking it up quite a bit sharp, and then I'm actually putting pressure on the strings to take out the excess stretch in them. But that's the reason why. That's a good question. Yeah, we did a lot of restringing, and so we would be going ahead and really cranking those up quite a bit, sometimes as much as 20 cents. Was there another question there, Stacy?
Yes. When training, are you proposing a particular mute type pattern?
I am. Absolutely. So again, in this effort to simplify things, because again, when technicians come to us or when they've read so many things and they've started this on their own, they've overcomplicated it to a point to where maybe it's a little bit discouraging to them. So with the upright piano tuning, I have 4 tools. Obviously the tuning hammer, whatever one suits your fancy, and there's a lot of them out there. So I'm going to use a tuning hammer. I'm going to use some kind of rubber wedge, and I like this, I think it's like a 3-inch by 1/2-inch rubber mute. I love this mute. I have a PAPS mute. And then finally I have my ETD, and that's it. And so with my upright pianos, these 4 tools are what I'm going to use. PAPS mute doesn't come into play until I'm after this mid section. I really only use it, unless it's a really short piano, I have to get into this mid section, but this PAPS mute doesn't come into play until really the last treble section of the piano. So I'm using this guy, the rubber mute. And so let's go ahead, and I practiced this very quickly and I got okay-ish at it, and you guys are probably gonna laugh at it, but because I think I have to do this in reverse. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this, and you all have to see, or get to see. Let's do this. So this is the ETD. This is Rayburn's Cyber Ear. And so for those that don't have it, really recommend it. And we get actually a special discount because of our partnership with Rayburn. So if down the line you wanted to get something like this, just let us know and we can help set that up. But basically you're at your piano and you're going to hit, let's see if I can do this. Yes, record right there. And it's going to take you to A4. Did you see that speed and that tempo? That's about what I do with it. About that speed, that tempo, and it went ahead and it measured it. And so what I usually try to get is it in the green. It'll go green, yellow, or red. Yellow is kind of like, well, I think I got a good reading on it. Red is like, no, go back. But I usually try to get it in green. So I will go through. I did that A4. Now I'm going to go down to A3. And just listen for the timing. can see that one was yellow. I'm still gonna keep it. Again, I'm using my rubber mute here. Yeah, it says so you don't have a lot of battery, dude. It's okay. So then, I'm going to reread that. Then I go ahead and hit calculate. I think it already somehow had octave number 5, so I'm going to hit calculate. It's going to say, hey, where was the treble strut? And so what it's talking about is, this is, what's it asking for? Yeah, second treble strut. So just so you know, what it's calculating is this is the first one, and this right here is the second one. So I usually just kind of look at here. I'm like, okay, it's between, the strut right here is between E5 and F5. So I'm just going to go E5. I click this.
Is there a way to tilt it just a little? It's really, I don't know. Can you guys see it okay?
Yeah, I can totally tilt it.
I think it might be easier to see. It's just really, it's really bright. Like I'm having
it's really bright.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time seeing the screen.
Yeah, we just see a bright white.
It just looks like, yeah, I can kind of make out stuff.
Got it.
Yeah.
There we go. We're gonna do this. It's really kind of cool.
Oh, closer is better. It is better closer. Like, yeah, like wait.
It's kind of weird how close you have to get it, so bear with me.
I know, it's totally fine. Hey, when it's so out in red, do you ever just tune A1 string to get a better reading?
So if it's so far in red, if it's so far out of tune, I'll usually just go with oh my god. Now I see your guys is like, here, we're gonna do this really quick. When it's so far, a lot of times I'll just go ahead and do a sample tuning of like, you know, they have pre-recorded pianos in there, you know, like a Yamaha Kawai upright. A lot of times I'll just select one of those to get, and then I'll do a first tuning with that and then go from there. Can you all see that a bit now?
Yeah, that's better now.
Cool.
Oh yeah, that's so much better. That is so much better.
This is where it puts
do it again. Oh, don't move it. No, it's great.
So David, I would say, you know, since I do use a different app, you know, but essentially what that app is doing is it's doing its readings off of 5 or 6 notes to be able to do its calculation on the inharmonicity of the piano.
Correct. What is yours that you have, Michael?
So I'm using Pianoscope.
Yeah.
And it can do multiple different iterations. It can, you know, you can either do a rough sample or you can do a detailed sample, which is every single note. So you can choose how deep you want to go into that to measure the piano.
Sure. Yeah, so this is honestly where I set it from here. It's just kind of right off the cue. It puts me at A0. And I'm using my rubber mute in the bass section. But of course, I'm not going to use any mute until I'm getting to that point where I'm in the bichords. So let's just go right here. Sorry, it's kind of difficult because it's opposite for me. I'm not looking at the device. I'm looking at you looking at my device. So I'm trying to trying to do it. So just bear with me. Times when we get students or technicians in, they're really pounding it way harder than they need to as well. They'll be going like crazy. And you just don't need to pound it that hard. But you can kind of see where I'm hoping to get it. If it's it's doing a slight roll sharp, I'm usually okay with that. A slight roll sharp for me is better than a slight roll flat. Jacob, the extraordinaire, is joining with me, so now I have to be sure to double check what I say, because now I have someone who's an expert.
That's why I'm here.
He's giving me a check.
Keeping you on, just keeping you in line.
Who's this? Yeah. And so I'll do a slight roll sharp. I'm curious where I left off. Jacob distracted me. And again, this is kind of what we're looking for. Get done with this bass in 5 to 10 minutes. So the piano is right at A440, and I'm just tuning it, like I said, to A442. It's always going to be easier to bring a piano up, for me, at least it is for me, than to lower a piano and then get it set and tuned. All right, so there's the singles. We got done with the singles in a couple of minutes, and it gives you kind of an idea of kind of what we're looking for, kind of the rhythm of the tuning, if you will. And because every tuning, you kind of do get into this rhythm to where, you know, you almost wake up and you're like, well, I guess I've tuned a piano. And that's what you do. You kind of get into that rhythm where you're feeling the sound, and you just kind of go into autopilot. You know, that's not the case when you're doing, you know, just strictly aural tuning, but with these ETDs, you're using your eyes, you're using your ears, and it really kind of comes together and syncs together. Questions about that so far?
Oh, kind of, because you touched on it. Mm-hmm. So I do this, but do I need to do this? You were talking about you'd rather raise it than lower it. So since it's summer, lots of pianos have been sharp.
Yeah.
So I've been taking them flat and then going sharp. Am I doing an extra step?
No.
Okay.
That's what you do. So if you're going to see now that I'm going into the bichords, that my first movement is actually every time, for the most part, once I'm in the bichords and the trichords, it's a push downward and then a pull up. Because I kind of like shock the string, lowering it. It helps me hear it that much easier as well. And I don't know what it is. I would say, I can't prove this, but it feels like my string breaking went down dramatically when I kind of started to implement this technique where my first movement is a downward, break the unison that much more, and then raise it up. Jacob, have you ever heard, am I crazy here? Do you do this technique? What are your thoughts?
I've done that when there's a large amount of calcification. If there's a lot of rust on the strings and it needs to move a lot, then I'll push it down first, just like you're saying.
Yeah.
On a normal tuning, though, I normally don't.
You don't? Okay. Does somebody have a question about how do you set the cyber tuner to A442 that I see? Maybe I'm crazy here.
No, Joel's asking for 432.
Oh, I'm not going to tune this A432. But you can. So if you actually go right here on the cyber tuner, you click this portion of it right in this upper right-hand corner, and then you're able to select it knows that I'm a robot, so it's having a hard time like detecting my skin or something. Usually it's pretty easy, but you basically tap this and there's a couple, you know, it's a kind of a rotating series of numbers, and you can, you know, get just the frequency that you want. And so I do get that request, A433, A435. I get it, and that happens quite a bit. And this is a great tool for that. In fact, I wasn't quite sure if it had this feature, because I used to use something else. Was it? I don't know if I think TuneLab has this feature, but I can't remember. But it's a great feature to have, especially when you have customers that are like, "Hey, do something crazy. I want it to be historical, this or that." And this really kind of makes quick work of that.
Yeah, using the set, you have to do some math.
Yeah, you have to do some math with that. That's totally true. That's so funny. Yeah, I used to use the SAT, and then I stopped because I think it died. I think that's what it was. Is it died? And then I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna. So yeah, I get my first thing, just so you all can see. And we are busy here at the office. Just so you all know, we're coming out of the slow season. This is typically the time where the phone starts to ring. You might find it within your own businesses that we're starting to get calls. Yeah, my first motion is always kind of that downwards. And then I bring it up and then settle it back into place. Again, I'm always being mindful, especially, I mean, when I was 15 working on pianos and tuning, I could do anything, right? You know, I'm just all over the place, but I have to be really mindful now that I'm 40, and it's just like, okay, I have to be careful where I'm moving, how I'm moving, and, you know, if you're doing this all day long, it really makes a difference. So be sure to keep that posture. I like to kind of be low to it. It's funny because we just hired a technician, and his name is Sean, who's been fantastic, but he's 6'3" or 4, and he sits down, but he's so tall that he, you know, his torso is, it just works great for him. And at first I was like, there's no way. I've never met a technician that can tune a full-size upright like this, sitting down and have it be really stable, but absolutely proved me wrong. So it's totally possible. If you want to sit, you can do that. And yeah, I was really impressed. So I kind of had to eat my own words there.
David, I had a question. Marla is a celloist, so like they have a very like unique ear to things. Yeah. So like, what is your advice about that?
Marla,
like time versus like hearing it and like just yeah.
Marla, I'm sorry, but cellists and the violinists are the worst people to tune pianos for. I'm just gonna say it. Because you're so used to tuning your own.
Well, thanks for that encouragement.
No, but it's a great thing because you've trained your ear so well, and you know, you have to tune your piano just like your cello just like I have to tune my guitar every time I pick it up. And so that's such a muscle that's been well used and grown. And so you definitely have a leg up on folks that haven't done that. And so that's like whenever we're looking for technicians, we're always like, we're actually looking for people that necessarily aren't pianists. We're like, are you a violinist? Are you a cellist? Are you a guitar player? Because those are the musicians that actually know what it's like to tune your instrument. Pianists never tune their instrument. So there's a massive leg up that you have in working on pianos because you know what that is. That was a long answer. What was your question, Marla? I'm so sorry.
Well, basically, I'm just making myself crazy because I do want to open up the piano and tune it every time I get it out now. And I don't, you know, we've got hundreds of strings here. This is just going to be an all-day project. But, you know, and also I'm not sure that clients are hearing what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So at what point do I cut off my own instincts, I guess?
One of my mentors, his name is Dell, and he's a phenomenal rebuilder. And he said to me, because I was working on something for days and it was just not getting right, finally got it right. And I'm like, how do I know if it's good enough? He said, looked at me and kind of has this like really grin. He's like, good enough is good enough when your standards are high enough. And I kind of like, that was like such a Yoda moment, right? And so I was like, okay. So once you get your standards, your skills at a certain level, there is going to be a point where like, that's good enough. Your customers are not going to hear it. And to be honest, that only comes with doing it and going out in the field, because you're going to realize pretty quick how little the vast majority of the customers can tell. And I'm really surprised when I get to customers' houses, even to this day, and they're like, I think it's kind of out of tune, and it's like crazy, like it's so like insanely out of tune that I'm like, how could you even stand listening to this at all? So yes, Marla, your standards are at a level that the vast majority, maybe the top 3% will notice, but the vast majority of everybody below that will not. Now that's not a ticket, a get out of jail free pass to like just do kind of crummy tunings, but I can tell you will not do that. But just know that sometimes you're going to have to say like, okay, good enough can be good enough. Jacob, I'm so curious what your thoughts are on this, because
so Marla, like especially I feel your pain on I'm not a cellist though, but I know what you're talking about. It's retraining your brain on what a inharmonic instrument is supposed to sound like, versus your bowed instruments are going to have perfect harmonics. So retraining your brain might take a bit, but retraining on what a piano is supposed to sound like, there is a difference, and it might take some time, but don't get discouraged. It's gonna be, it's gonna take some work, but just like learning a language, just like training any skill, it's gonna take a little bit of work, but it's gonna pay off in the end. So yeah, learning what to go away from perfect fits, like Joel was saying, and things like that. You just have to retrain your brain. Sorry.
And there are limitations to what a particular piano can even do. You might run across false beats and things of that nature. I know that for my guitar. Sometimes I'll play a guitar and I'm like, oh, I can't play up in this area because it's just the intonation, nothing, it's just not right, and it drives me crazy. So, yeah, I like what Jacob said. Good job, Jacob. That was a good answer.
Hey, Bruce, didn't you have a question too? What was your question?
No, I was going to be a smart aleck about being a piano tuner who plays the piano. But I do have a question. So when I was new to all this thing, that I kept dropping mutes and spinets and tearing the piano apart. So then I started using the one with the handle on it and tying a ribbon to it. How are you not dropping mutes?
I have dropped my fair share of mutes, so I don't want to pretend like I don't ever do that. I found that I don't know if you're doing the same thing. That was Bruce, right? Yeah, Bruce said that. But the smaller mutes have less weight to them like this. This is only, I don't know, 3 inches maybe. And it seems like it doesn't have as much weight, and so it doesn't seem to drop as much. You may also not be putting it in as far as I am. But I found that when I started to move to a smaller, like a shorter mute, thinner mute, I dropped them less. That was my thought.
I noticed this week I was dropping a bunch. I had to clean all my mutes again. I just take some Windex, and you wash the rubber, and then it becomes a little bit sticky again, and then I don't drop them again. And that's what I do every time it starts happening over and over again. So try that out.
Never heard of that. Yeah, it's time to wash your mutes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a whole nother level. Wash your mutes, Bruce. That's
rubber. It's rubber, so
it
will collect your skin oils and different things. So if you clean it off, then it's going to be just like brand new sticky rubber again.
Well, not only that, if you have a piano with all the dust that might have collected on the strings, that's going to go right to the mute as well.
No.
I would like to stop using the handled ones with the crazy ribbon on it. So I look like somebody saying piano tuner. Yeah. Okay, good. Thanks. All good work.
I don't really, yeah, the ones with the wire sticker in it, I really don't care for those as well. But yeah, they definitely don't fall down as much. So I get that. So really quickly, it's good to remember, like Marla was saying, that there's a lot of strings. This isn't something you just gotta open up and you can quickly tune. It takes a while, so be really patient with yourself. And I know that some of the stuff that I've shown you is kind of feels like the opposite of being patient with yourself. 5 to 10 minutes, 20 to 30, 20 to 25. How am I gonna? So I'm not saying this to kind of push into you and discourage you, but more just this is our method, and it is tried and true. We've taught 24 technicians over the years how to work on pianos and kind of level up. And we've worked with really hundreds and hundreds of technicians and students through the Piano Technician Academy. And so this is the same method that we teach, and it does work, but you do have to be mindful of it. And you do have to push yourself a bit to go kind of further than what you think you're able to do. But that's kind of the same with anything. But the big thing is try to eliminate some of this friction right now. Fewer mutes, kind of simplify that, get your posture right. I would get a good ETD, whether it's the Cybertuner or whether it's TuneLab or Piano Scope. These are all great devices, and it allows you to focus on your tuning movement and seeing that and feeling that. Once you can see it in real time, it really helps your body understand how much movement. And so you can do this in tandem with learning how to tune, 100% aurally. And it's just another tool that's very helpful. And I would say that, Jacob, you're gonna have to correct me, but would you say that most technicians in today's world do use an ETD of some kind?
Yeah, so the PTG did a survey a few years ago, pre-COVID, and it was something like 87% at the time were using some sort of electronic device.
87, nearly 90%.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that number goes up every year.
Yeah.
I agree. I think as you're training yourself to go 100% aurally, if you want, I think it's a great tool because you're adding one of your senses along with your hearing. It's not a detriment as long as it's not a crutch as well.
Yeah.
Use it as a benefit.
Yeah. Just trying to think. This is the time that we can kind of open it up for more Q&A. We can kind of go into technique. We can do anything. I'm here to kind of show you stuff. So it's really, what would you guys like to know more about? Do you have questions about? What would you like to see?
I have a quick question on loose pins. I know it's kind of a side note.
Yeah.
But because I had a ton of loose pins last week, and I have a pin punch, but I also want to buy CA glue, and it comes in a million different viscosities.
Yeah.
I have no intention of tipping that piano at my age with a bad back.
Yeah.
So if I use CA glue, I want to put it in, upright. So what viscosity should I use for that?
Yeah. I don't know about you, Jacob, but I've always used just kind of that ultra thin, the super thin. That's what I've used in the past. And using it it usually has a little nozzle, and you can kind of, if you really don't want to squirt it in there. Again, my first protocol would be to get a metal sledge with a tuning push, and then pop those tuning pins deeper into the hole. Usually that's the thing that fixes it. If you have enough room. If you don't have enough room, yeah, you're gonna have to what we call dope the pin block. And that is to, add glue to it. It's definitely something to tell the customer about before you do it. And it's
I punch some in. Do you ever do both, a combination? Because maybe there's not enough room to punch it in just because where the string is. Or do you ever do both, or do you just one or the other?
Yeah, you do. You punch it in first as a first measure, and then see if that works because that's going to be much faster.
Yeah.
And then using CA as a secondary.
Yeah.
I would be very hesitant, Robert, to recommend doing CA treatment without tipping it on its back. I don't know about you, David, but it's using. I agree. I use the ultra thin, but because it's ultra thin, it'll go everywhere. So having gravity on your side, that's just kind of a requirement. Is there a technician nearby that might have a tilter that might give you a hand?
I think he does. I've just never attempted it. I've not seen it in a class yet. It might be nice to see somebody tilt that piano.
Yeah, we have a tilter. That is a good point. I think that maybe next week we'll do that as one of the classes because that's a good one. And it's really not that difficult once you have a tilter to do it. I have done it vertically, Jacob, and I was very careful and had the needle. And I told them, I said, hey, I don't have the tilter on me. They're like, just do it now. Just do whatever you can here. I'm like, all right, we're going for this. Buckle up.
Nice.
And it worked. And I didn't spray it everywhere.
Sweet. That's awesome.
That being said, one of my worst injuries, Robert, was with this stuff. And what it was is I didn't realize that I had some on my finger. And I went like this because I had something in my eye. And it glued my eyelashes together shut. It wasn't really injury, like it hurt. But then I had to like somehow try to razor blade them out and stuff like that. And that was really bad. So that was me at 16 years old. So by the way, I'm like, yeah, that didn't happen last week. So just FYI, that stuff can get everywhere. It's kind of, you got to be careful with it. Like Jacob said.
Is that one where you try to have nitrile gloves on you as well? So you have that to protect your hands?
Yeah. Always have the proper protection, right?
Yeah.
So always have your gloves. Wear a mask because there is a small amount of cyanide and cyanoacrylate. So always wear a mask. Some people wear like if you wear glasses, you're probably fine. But if you have safety goggles, you probably want to think about that.
So CA glue is where pin punch fails.
Yeah,
I don't know, Jacob. You've probably done hundreds of CA glue treatments. Is that like your go-to first? What's your go-to?
I tend to not trust tapping in the pin just because I don't know the longevity of that. So like personally, it could work, but I don't know personally if it's going to last because I have seen people punch it in and then it doesn't work. And every time I've done a CA treatment, it's maybe like 2 or 3 pins don't work that I can think of in the hundreds of pianos that I've done. So
that's a really good thing to know because I've done more of the tapping and you're right. Like I'm not always 100% that's going to stay.
Yeah, it could. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I tend to trust CA, well, at least the pinball treatment more, because I have seen that results over the years, going back to the same piano over and over.
That's so true. Like we've come back to tune the same piano 3 or 4 years later, and it's still holding from a CA glue treatment. That's pretty amazing, actually. Yeah.
Do you ever do it to the grand pianos that you remove the action and then also put some kind of cloth or paper towels down? Because I did that once when I was early on and I didn't realize, and it wicked down and literally drizzled onto like the hammer flanges.
Yeah.
So that's a thing. So
that is a thing.
Part of the reason you come here every week and hear these classes is you get to learn about not putting it in your eye and not
and protecting.
Learn from our mistakes.
Right. And put something on the carpet. I've had an experience with a tech that it dripped onto the no matter what, put like a blanket or something just in case. Because if that gets on the carpet, it's devastating. It's not a fun thing. No.
I'm going to finish tuning this bass really quick because I need to get
one question for
go for it.
Jacob or you, David. What's the difference between the like instant pin tight that you see on shaft and CA glue? Is it the same stuff or is it something totally different?
I've never
Is
seen
that the red bottle on shaft?
I don't know whether it's in the picture that they have, it's white, but it's PIN-TITE.
I think it's the same. I might be wrong though.
Yeah, we usually get the stuff that we get from like Amazon. They sell it now. And it's like
we have a local woodworker shop that sells pretty much the same thing.
They also have a fast drying spray for it, which is really nice too. If you wanted, I wouldn't use it for this, but for other things that you were like, okay, key tops is a good one. A lot of times I'll put it like if ivory popped off, I'll put a little bit of CA glue and I'll spray on the other side of the key and then put it in. You're gonna work really quick. But that's another thing that you can do.
I like how you went like this. That's what I was worrying about. Put a little bit of CA glue.
Oh, no. Gosh. All right, I'm done telling you guys all my secrets of the things I've done to screw up. Let's see. You're all gonna get to see. I can't remember. Did you say, Jacob, that you have a Cyber Tuner as well, or is it TuneLab or
TuneLab?
TuneLab.
And then a SAD, of course. But
this light is bugging me, making the sound. It used to be, I mean, granted, this was like 20 years ago, but when you would break out the old ETD, you would get a lot of bad looks from the customers. Like, what is that? People like, you must not know what you're doing because you're using an ETD. And so then I have to kind of switch to the tuning fork. But I would say that there was a lot of that earlier on. And to be honest, I'm not sure how great. I mean, the SAT was a great device, but that was a thing that we kind of had to overcome earlier on in the, as ETDs were in their infancy. People were like not used to this, and they would call and be like, "Hey, your technician doesn't use this, does he?" That has since really gone away. I haven't had anything like that. I would say another thing that has gone away is. I think that maybe 20, 25 years ago, the Guild, there was more of an awareness for, I need an RPT. And that could be regional because some places more on the East Coast, I think that there's more of an awareness maybe of the Piano Technicians Guild and the RPT certification. I feel like on the West Coast, maybe there's not as much, but I could be wrong. And that could be regional too. But a lot of times people are worried and they think, oh, I'm not an RPT yet. I want to become one. I guess I can't go and tune pianos yet. And that's just not the case. And so and we've talked about this before, the RPT certification is a fantastic thing to do. It's really something you should do to push yourself. But it's definitely something that you don't have to do to go into a customer's house to work on pianos. The reality is you do need to understand kind of what you're doing. You should be insured, just in case something happens. And again, there's always those horror stories of, leaving something and somebody, gets hurt. But be insured and, make sure that you have some of the kind of the basic business requirements. The reality is what I'm showing you today is something that as you get more proficient at, there is no real certification that you have to have in order to do it. It's going to be for your own personal growth. And luckily, everybody here that comes in every week, that you all are pretty hungry for that. It's just like, okay, what else can I learn? What can I do here? So I'm just like super thrilled with all of you and your pursuit for just kind of learning and elevating your craft is it's a really cool thing. So I would say that just continue to have that in whatever platform you find, is just always elevate yourself. And the technicians that I respect the most, they're always learning new things and elevating themselves. And I'm just like, my brother Adam is a good example of it. One of the instructors for the Piano Technician Academy. He's always showing me things and talking to me like, oh, this just came up. This is this and this. Jacob's one of those people. He's always on the cutting edge. And so it's really, really cool if you can just continue to push yourself. And I know you all will. So it's kind of preaching to the choir, but I just wanted to say it's been a really amazing thing watching all of you and hearing the questions that you ask, because they've elevated as well. It's just, it used to be that I knew the answer to it pretty quick with some of the questions, and now it's like, oh shoot, Robert, you're stumping me, which has been kind of fun. So kudos to you all for that.
David, on the topic of building skills and stuff, I did want to let everybody know I found out 2 different events that are going to be happening in the Midwest.
Oh.
So one is the PTG is holding a grand regulation class in October 10th through the 12th. So that's something for people to look at if they are able to travel and spend the money for that class. And then there's also, hosted by the St. Louis PTG, actually that same weekend, October 12th, they're also doing a grand regulation class as well. So
wow,
that'll be, I haven't seen the details on exactly where it's going to be held, but it'll be in the St. Louis area. So that's 2 things that are coming up that I wanted to be sure to let everybody know.
Do you know, Michael, just off the top of your head, roughly what the cost and something like that would be?
The cost of the St. Louis one is probably $50.
Yeah.
The 3-day class from the home office, I don't know the details on the cost of that.
Yeah, and just
but it's probably fairly expensive. It would be equivalent of going to, you know, a major convention or something like that. So
yeah, no, and there are more and more kind of pop-up things coming out. I think that the Butler School does some kind of in-person things. There's another company called another school out there called the School of Piano Technology or something like that. Just so you all know, when you go to these like week-long events, Render Academy is another one. You can expect to spend between $2,000 and $4,000 is what I'm finding. And so when you get something like this, which is like a 3-day intensive regulation for potentially just in the hundreds, it's definitely well worth it.
Yeah, the 3-day event at the home office, I would expect to be in the 2,000 range.
Oh, it would be. Okay.
You know, it's 3 days worth of training, and it's a limited class size, and they're bringing in technicians to teach and all of that. So.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. I think that right now I think COVID, it's interesting. And I think it was Tim Barnes that told us this, but he brought up the fact that there was that I think it was the St. Louis plane that went down and they landed on the Hudson. And I think, there's a movie about it and whatnot. And what happened is that every person, like to a man, changed careers after that. Like 100% changed careers. And it was just this kind of a weird phenomenon. And that was a kind of a life-changing scare, point in their lives. And they kind of reconsidered their choices and where they wanted to be employed and whatnot. The same has kind of been said for the COVID pandemic. You have a lot of people that were kind of lifelong CPAs or lifelong piano technicians. We lost a couple that are saying, you know what, I want to redo things. I want to change things up. So you're getting a lot of people that have not only left the industry, but then a lot of people that are now entering the industry during COVID. So it's kind of this fascinating thing. And so there's definitely a massive need for technicians. And so you all are going to have a lot of work ahead of you, as some of you already have noticed. So good job. Thank you for being here. We're going to be talking on Friday, doing kind of an open Q&A. But Robert, I really like the idea of doing a CA treatment to this guy right here. And I can kind of show you how to tip it. We'll use a tilter and kind of go from there. And I'll show you how to not hurt your back. But I'm always nervous. Jacob, I don't know about you, but I'm always nervous when I tip these things. Just, is it going to tip just right? Is it going to do it just right? And usually I have 2 people to help me. What about you?
You strap it though, right? Or are you just tilting it?
I never
just tilt it.
Yeah, I just tilt it.
Gosh, I'd be nervous too if I didn't strap it. I'm like, that's easy.
You go in the center or do you go side?
I get on the center.
You do.
Lately, though, the thing that I worry about more lately is like getting it out of away from the wall by myself and not scratching anything. And so that takes me more time really than tilting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my concern, is, you know, needing a second person just to get a piano out from the wall into an open space in the room to be able to do the tilt.
Yeah. If it's hardwood floor,
if you can get it, then definitely do it.
Yeah. If it's a hardwood floor, I usually have like towels that I kind of can fold up and bunch up, and I just kind of lift it and kind of scoot it under, and then I can kind of just move it out.
That's super smart.
Nice. But if it is carpet, and we'll go over this next week, but if it's carpet, you have to be very careful, because a lot of times those casters are rusty, and when you slide it on that carpet, you leave a nice brown trail. So
true. So true, especially those older pianos. Yes.
All right, everybody, keep tuning. Go ahead and try to kind of push yourself a little bit. I'm curious what your all's fastest time to get it down to. Like, were you before you tried to do this, and maybe after doing it for a week on your own piano, what did you get down to? I'd be curious to see what that is. And again, you don't have to, but it's kind of fun to just kind of push yourself. And sometimes it's nice to kind of have a cheering squad, which that is what we are for you. So I'll see you on Friday. Have a great evening, and we'll just keep on working on piano craft.
Yep. See you Friday, everyone. Bye.